We're sitting here with Professor Diane Spatz from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and the University of Pennsylvania after a riveting talk that received numerous rounds of applause. What do you think was resonating so well with the audience today?
All around the world, nurses, physicians, healthcare providers, we all want to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. I think people really do want to provide good care to families. Yet I think many health professionals struggle with how to do that. They really would like to be able to support moms in their breastfeeding journeys, but they're not really sure how, or they've never been provided with the education or the training. And so I think that the audience could really see that there are workable solutions and that we don't just have to accept the status quo.
I agree 100%. You mentioned a lot about prenatal counselling. It's an opportunity to set expectations. If it's not possible to assess the risk of a mother and a baby, how do you balance setting the right breastfeeding goals with not breastfeeding, so lactation support? How do you balance educating a mother on the two different ways breastfeeding could go?
So I want to make sure I'm interpreting your question correctly. If you don't have the opportunity to speak to a mother prenatally,
or to assess the risk of her baby requiring a NICU stay, so
okay,
just general prenatal counselling without any risk assessment of a mother and baby.
So I think that one of the things that's really critical, and a long time ago in 2012, the American Academy of Pediatrics position statement said we shouldn't be ever asking mothers if they want to breastfeed or not. Mm-hmm. We should be assuming that if we give all women information, mm-hmm, that they're going to make the choice to breastfeed. Mm-hmm. So perhaps it's a way, it's a different way in which we think of it. And at my organization, we don't really ever ask the mothers the question, oh, were you planning to breastfeed or were you planning to formula feed? Mm-hmm. We just make the assumption, mm-hmm, that they're going to want to breastfeed. And then if they say, no, that's disgusting, or no, I don't want to do that, then we are able to have a conversation about what their barrier is. So I think a lot of times, health professionals are worried about insulting a mother, or we don't want a mother to feel guilty, by talking to her about this. But it's about having women make an informed choice, and also to understand from a science-based perspective not only why they can do it, but how they can do it, and that biologically, women have breasts to be able to breastfeed. Mm-hmm. And there are very few indications in which a mother cannot achieve a full milk supply. So I think, again, I think it comes down to how we message it to families, mm-hmm, and how we have those conversations.
Your statement on the shift of that messaging from breastfeeding success, mm-hmm, to setting short, medium and long-term goals received almost a standing ovation. Can you just explain this to us again quickly? So it's interesting because this has been an evolution, mm-hmm, on my part. I actually am embarrassed to say that I have some publications that have the word success in them. And but I have really come to be concerned about that word, really because, especially in America, there are what they call mommy wars going on about the women who breastfeed and the women who don't, and there's some hostility out there amongst women, and you'll hear women say things, well, I tried to breastfeed, but it didn't work, and people shouldn't breastfeed, people shouldn't pressure moms, and there's a lot of tension. Mm-hmm. And I really think that if we change our language, and again, say to a mom, here's why human milk is important.
here's why breastfeeding is important. Here's kind of looking at the dose response, because we know it's a dose response. And given what we know about the science and the dose response, can we help you set some goals that will work into your lifestyle, that will work for you? And I'm going to give an example. One of the questions I asked during the presentation was, does your hospital track why moms stop pumping before discharge if they have a sick baby? And we do. And so each month we review that. And so we had a case recently, and a mom had twins, okay, and she stopped pumping prior to discharge. But the twins were with us for 4 months. And she pumped for 4 months. She never had prenatal intent to breastfeed. She came to us saying, I don't want to breastfeed. I think it's disgusting. I will never do this. And she pumped for 4 months, and we were sending her and her twins home with an entire freezer full of milk. So she was going to be able to provide exclusive human milk to her babies for another 2 months. So no, she didn't exclusively breastfeed for 6 months, but she well exceeded her goal.
You travel all over the world. You spoke about your hospital when you first started. You speak about Tampa Hospital, India, China, Thailand. The baseline figures that you are finding when you first go in there are quite concerning. When we see that breastfeeding statistics for healthy term-born babies are not particularly good, the findings for the most vulnerable babies are even worse. Is this a global crisis of sorts? And if it is, with the evidence so clear and proven improvement steps, what is the gap? Is it just a one-woman crusade is not being enough, or is it just, where's the barrier in this uptake?
So,
a big question.
UNICEF and the World Health Organization have long been the promoters of breastfeeding. And the 10 steps to successful breastfeeding have been, the promotion that's happened for over 25 years. And unfortunately, that focus is really only on healthy babies and moms and babies with no complications. I think one of the challenges, and I think I've heard from the World Health Organizations, one of the reasons they're kind of leery of entering that space of the NICU is that worldwide, what happens in neonatal intensive care unit is very different from India to China to the United States to Sweden, both culturally somewhat, but also resources and accessibility to resources and decisions about even what babies we may save, right? And so I think that there's been this hesitation that because there's variations in NICU care globally, we can't touch that, right? However, when you look at the evidence for human milk and breastfeeding, the evidence for the sick baby is very clear that we really probably shouldn't be putting anything but human milk into these vulnerable infants. So I have been working with other organizations in terms of trying to think about how do we address this? And I think there's opportunity there, but I think part of the issue is that oftentimes, and sometimes when you're in a country where breastfeeding is the cultural norm, administrators, physicians, nurses, they don't even think they have a problem. Or they don't even know that they have a problem because they just assume, well, everyone breastfeeds and that's part of our culture, but they're not measuring anything. And so I think, I think that one of the questions one of the audience members asked was, well, our administrators are not going to support this. We don't have money to do this. We all need to be collecting data. No matter where we are, no matter where we start, it doesn't cost a lot of money to collect data. If we don't know what our problems are, how do we know how to address them? And so again, I go back to that one tenet of evidence-based management, which is treating your organization as an unfinished prototype. We got to know where we are to know where we need to go.
And so your 10 steps, you've replicated them all over the world. Those 10 steps really demonstrate that resources don't have to be an issue for addressing informed decision. It's not a resource heavy. But you first need to have a different set of metrics, or you have metrics for each 10 steps. Are there some steps that are more important? Are they sequential? Are they in terms of priority?
So the first 5.
Okay.
I would clearly say the first 5. And number 1 and 2, if we don't get a mom to make the decision to express milk for her baby, breastfeeding is never going to be an option, right? So that first message of the critical value of human milk as a medical intervention, it's got to be clear. It's got to be a no question, a no brainer, and no conversation. And when moms have evidence, they all elect to do it. I mean, our data supports that. And then if we convince a mom that human milk is so important, we want to actually make sure that she can make milk, right? And not that she doesn't just have a little milk for a couple of weeks, but that she can provide milk through her baby through discharge. And so the steps are sequential, that if you don't do number 1, you can't do number 2, and if you don't do number 2, you can't do number 3. But I can tell you from, a time investment standpoint, if you do the first 5 steps well, the rest of it, as I like to say, is like gravy. It's easy.
And an exciting last 14, 15 years for you. What can we see in the future? Do you have some big plans? What's on the horizon?
Big plans. Does moving to Hawaii count?
Personally, that's a big plan.
No. Big plans. So I would,
Diane, China, India.
No, I would really like to see continued uptake of my model globally. I'd like to be able to establish a growing interest in this concept of human milk and breastfeeding as being vital to societies globally. I didn't get to talk about it today, but I recently traveled to the Dominican Republic with Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. It's one of the lowest resource countries in the world with an abysmal breastfeeding exclusivity rate of 4% at 6 months. And the lack of healthcare provider knowledge, training, education, the myths that abounded. So this work it's global. It's in every single country. It's all over the world. So I think I'd like to continue my global impact. I am absolutely passionate about the critical role of nurses in lactation support. I believe 100% that nurses are the answer globally.
And if you had one message for anyone, just one message for moms, healthcare professionals, policymakers, the general public, what would that be about human milk lactation support?
Human milk is a medical intervention. It's life-saving. Mothers need to know that if they face challenges, there are solutions, and that it's really important as health professionals that we make sure we're providing evidence-based lactation support and care.